Imagine demanding a stranger vacate their seat, only to be confronted with a silent testament to unimaginable sacrifice. On a crowded city bus, Margaret's impatience clashes with Isaac's quiet dignity. Her accusations escalate, fueled by prejudice and entitlement, until Isaac reaches into his jacket. What he reveals isn't a disability card, but a symbol of valor, so profound it silences the entire bus. But the shame of public exposure might be the least of Margaret's worries when the public gets a hold of her moment of callousness. How far will one act of arrogance ripple, and can redemption ever be found in the glare of a viral disgrace? It was a typical Monday evening in downtown Chicago. The city bus crawled through rush-hour traffic, packed with tired commuters heading home after a long day. The air inside the bus was stuffy, filled with the smell of wet coats and exhaust fumes. Isaac Coleman sat quietly in the priority seat near the front of the bus. At 58, his body carried the weight of his military service. His right leg, damaged during combat, throbbed with pain after standing all day at his job at the Veterans Affairs office. He leaned on his wooden cane, the one his grandson had gifted him last Christmas, and gazed out the window at the gray Chicago skyline. Next up, Michigan Avenue, the driver announced over the crackling speaker. The bus lurched to a stop, and a stream of new passengers pushed their way inside. Among them was Margaret Hensley, a woman in her mid-50s, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a designer coat that seemed out of place on public transportation. Margaret scanned the crowded bus with narrowed eyes. Her gaze landed on Isaac, sitting in the priority seating area. She made her way toward him, bumping into other passengers without apology. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut through the noise inside the bus. "I need that seat." Isaac looked up at her, his expression calm. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I need to sit here because of my leg." Margaret's lips tightened into a thin line. "Well, I've had a very long day. My feet are killing me in these heels, and those seats are for people who really need them." "Yes, ma'am," Isaac replied politely. "That's why I'm sitting here. I have a disability." Margaret looked him up and down, her disbelief evident. "You look perfectly fine to me." The passengers nearby began to take notice of the exchange, some exchanging glances, others pretending not to hear. The tension on the crowded bus was just beginning to build. Margaret shifted her designer purse to her other arm and leaned closer to Isaac. "Look, I don't mean to be rude, but I really need to sit down. I've been standing all day at my job." Isaac nodded sympathetically. "I understand, ma'am. I've been standing a lot today too, which is why my leg is acting up. These seats are reserved for elderly and disabled passengers." Margaret's face flushed red. "Are you saying I'm elderly? I'll have you know I'm only 53. "No, ma'am. Not at all," Isaac said, keeping his voice level. "I'm just explaining why I'm sitting here. I have a war injury." A young woman sitting across from them looked up from her phone, now openly watching the exchange. A few other passengers were starting to pay attention too. "War injury?" Margaret scoffed. "Which war exactly? You don't look like you've been in any war recently." Isaac took a deep breath. "I served in Afghanistan, ma'am. Got injured during my 3rd tour." Margaret rolled her eyes dramatically. "Right, and I'm the Queen of England. Look, I don't have time for this. There are plenty of people who fake disabilities to get special treatment. I see it all the time." The young woman across the aisle gasped quietly and pulled out her phone, angling it discreetly toward Margaret and Isaac. "Ma'am, I'm not faking anything," Isaac said, his voice still calm but firmer now. "I'd appreciate it if you'd stop making accusations." "Well, I'd appreciate a seat," Margaret snapped back. "If you were really injured, you'd have some proof, wouldn't you? A card or something? Or are we all just supposed to take your word for it?" The bus hit a pothole, causing everyone to lurch forward. Margaret grabbed the handrail and glared at Isaac, as if the bump in the road was somehow his fault too. "This is ridiculous," she muttered loudly. "I'm getting the driver." Margaret pushed her way to the front of the bus, her heels clicking against the floor. The bus driver, a middle-aged man named Dave with salt and pepper hair, glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Excuse me, driver," Margaret said loudly. There's a man back there refusing to give up his seat in the priority section. I think you need to do something about it." Dave sighed, keeping his eyes on the road. "Ma'am, if he's elderly or disabled—" "That's just it," Margaret interrupted. "He claims he has some war injury, but he looks perfectly fine to me. I think he's lying to keep the seat." By now, nearly everyone on the bus was watching the scene unfold. Some passengers whispered to each other, while others pulled out their phones to record. "Ma'am, I can't just—" Dave began. "It's your job to enforce the rules, isn't it?" Margaret pressed. "That section is for people who really need it. I've been on my feet all day at my real estate office, and my back is killing me." Dave pulled the bus over at the next stop and put it in park. He turned to face Margaret. "Okay, let me see what's going on." They walked back to where Isaac was sitting. Isaac looked up at them, his expression still calm, but his eyes showing a hint of weariness. "Sir," Dave said politely, "this lady says you're sitting in priority seating and won't give up your seat." Before Isaac could respond, Margaret jumped in. "He claims he has some war injury, but he doesn't have any proof. Meanwhile, I'm in actual pain from standing all day." The man standing nearby couldn't hold back anymore. "Lady, why don't you just leave him alone? There are other people standing too." "Stay out of this," Margaret snapped at him. "This isn't about you." Dave raised his hands. "Okay, let's all calm down. Sir, do you have a disability that requires you to use priority seating?" Isaac nodded. "Yes, I do. I have a titanium rod in my right leg from an improvised explosive device explosion in Afghanistan. Standing for long periods causes severe pain." Margaret made a dismissive noise. "That's convenient. Anyone could say that." "Ma'am," Dave said, his patience clearly wearing thin, "I can't just force someone out of priority seating based on your assessment of their disability." "So you're taking his side?" Margaret's voice rose. "This is harassment. I'm a paying customer too, you know." The tension on the bus was thick enough to cut with a knife. Passengers were openly staring now, many with phones raised to capture the drama. Isaac sat quietly through it all, his hands resting on his cane. "Ma'am," Dave said firmly, "I'm not taking sides, I'm following protocol." Margaret wasn't backing down. "Well, your protocol is flawed if it lets people fake disabilities to get special treatment. I want to see some proof." Isaac looked up at her, then at Dave. His eyes, which had remained patient until now, showed a flash of something else, not anger, but a quiet dignity. "You want proof?" Isaac asked softly. Margaret crossed her arms. "Yes, I do. Anyone can claim to be a veteran these days." Isaac nodded slowly. He reached into his jacket, and for a moment the bus went completely silent. No one knew what to expect. From an inside pocket, Isaac pulled out a small blue case. It was worn around the edges, clearly carried for many years. With careful movements, he opened it to reveal a medal hanging from a blue ribbon with white stars. It was the Congressional Medal of Honor. Dave's eyes widened in recognition. "Sir, is that?" Isaac nodded. "Yes, it is." A collective gasp went through the bus. Even those who didn't immediately recognize the medal could tell from the reaction of others that this was something significant. For those who don't know, a young man in military fatigues spoke up from the back of the bus. "That's the Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration awarded by the United States government. It's given for acts of valor above and beyond the call of duty." Margaret's face drained of color. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "I don't usually carry this with me," Isaac explained quietly. "But today was the anniversary of the day I lost 3 of my men. I visited their families." The bus was so quiet, you could hear the rain starting to patter against the windows. Dave, the bus driver, removed his cap in respect. "Sir, may I ask what happened? If you don't mind sharing, that is." Isaac looked down at the medal in his hands, then back up at the driver. The entire bus waited in silence for his response. "It was my 3rd tour," Isaac began, his voice steady but soft. "We were escorting a medical convoy near Kandahar. Our lead vehicle hit an improvised explosive device. The blast flipped it, and we came under heavy fire immediately after." Passengers leaned in, captivated by his story. Margaret stood frozen, her face pale. 3 of my men were trapped in the overturned vehicle, which had caught fire. I managed to pull them out one by one, but took a bullet in the process. The last man I carried was already gone, but I didn't know it at the time. Isaac touched his right leg gently. The doctor saved my leg, but it's never been the same. Some days are better than others. Today isn't one of the good days. A woman sitting nearby wiped a tear from her eye. "Thank you for your service," she said quietly. Others on the bus murmured similar sentiments. The young man in military fatigues stood at attention and offered a respectful salute. Margaret's righteous indignation had completely evaporated. She looked embarrassed, her earlier confidence replaced by visible shame. I didn't know," she stammered. "You couldn't have known," Isaac replied, without a hint of resentment. "But maybe next time, give people the benefit of the doubt." The young woman who had been recording the entire exchange spoke up. "Sir, would it be okay if I shared this video? People need to see this." Isaac thought for a moment, then nodded. If it helped someone else in my position, then yes. Margaret's eyes widened in horror as she realized the entire confrontation had been recorded. "Please don't," she whispered. "My clients will see it. My family will see it." "Maybe they should," someone in the back called out. By the time the bus reached the next stop, the video was already uploaded to different social media. The young woman who recorded it, Tasha Williams, had added a simple caption. "Karen demands disabled veteran give up his seat, then he shows his Medal of Honor. #respect, #veterans deserve more." Margaret stood by the door, her face burning with humiliation. Her phone began to buzz in her purse, first one notification, then another and another. She pulled it out with trembling hands to see a text from her daughter. "Mom, is this you in this video? It's all over Twitter?" The bus doors opened, and Margaret practically fled, nearly tripping in her haste to escape the stares of the other passengers. Isaac remained in his seat, carefully returning the medal to its case and tucking it back into his jacket pocket. Several passengers approached him, offering handshakes and words of gratitude. "Mr. Coleman," Dave said, using the name he'd seen engraved on the medal, "it would be an honor if you'd ride my route anytime, no charge." Isaac smiled and shook his head. "That's kind of you, but not necessary. I'm just a regular guy trying to get home like everyone else." Tasha sat down in the now empty seat across from Isaac. "Sir, your video is blowing up. It's been shared over 1,000 times already." Isaac looked surprised. "That fast?" Tasha nodded, scrolling through her phone. "People are calling you a hero twice over. Once for your service, and once for how you handled that woman with such dignity." An elderly woman made her way down the aisle and stopped beside Isaac. "Young man, my husband was in Vietnam. He never talked about it much before he passed, but I know he would have been proud to shake your hand today." Isaac stood up, despite the pain in his leg, and embraced the woman gently. "Thank you, ma'am. That means a lot." As the bus continued its route, Isaac became the center of a spontaneous gathering of respect and gratitude, a far cry from the confrontation just minutes earlier. Margaret hurried down the sidewalk, her phone continuing to buzz with notifications. She ducked into a coffee shop and sank into a corner seat, her hands shaking as she scrolled through social media. The video was everywhere. In just 30 minutes, it had been shared thousands of times. The comments were brutal. "This is what entitlement looks like. Imagine demanding a Medal of Honor recipient give up his seat because your feet hurt from your designer heels. I think I sold a house through her agency last year. Never again." Margaret's real estate broker called. "Margaret, what the hell is going on? Our office phone is ringing off the hook with complaints about you." "I didn't know he was a war hero," Margaret said weakly. "How was I supposed to know?" "That's not the point," her broker snapped. "You don't treat people that way, period. Medal or no medal." After hanging up, Margaret sat staring at her reflection in the dark window of the coffee shop. When had she become this person? She thought about her late father, who had served in Vietnam. What would he have thought of her behavior today? Her phone rang again. Her daughter, Emily. "Mom, please tell me that's not you in that video," Emily said, her voice tight with disappointment. Emily, I can explain. Explain what? That you harassed a disabled veteran? Mom, my friends are texting me about this. Margaret felt tears welling up. I made a mistake, Emily. A terrible mistake. There was silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Emily spoke again. You know what Grandpa would say about this, right? The mention of her father hit Margaret like a physical blow. Yes, she whispered. I know. Fix it, Mom, Emily said firmly. Find that man and apologize. Not for the cameras, not for social media, but because it's the right thing to do. After hanging up, Margaret sat in the coffee shop for a long time, thinking about what her daughter had said. The right thing to do. When had she stopped caring about that? The next morning, Isaac Coleman sat at his usual table at Manny's Diner, a small establishment a few blocks from his apartment. He came here every Tuesday for breakfast, 2 eggs, wheat toast, and coffee. Manny himself approached the table, coffee pot in hand. You're famous, Isaac. That video of you on the bus has over 2 million views now. Isaac shook his head, embarrassed by the attention. I didn't do anything special, Manny. Being humble, that's what makes you special? Manny replied, refilling Isaac's cup. Oh, and breakfast is on the house today. That's not necessary, Isaac began, but was interrupted by the bell above the diner door. Margaret Hensley stood in the entrance, looking nothing like the confident woman from the bus. Her hair was pulled back simply, her face free of makeup, and she wore jeans and a sweater instead of her designer outfit. The diner fell silent as people recognized her from the video. She hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the stares, but then spotted Isaac and walked toward his table. Isaac looked up at her, his expression neutral. Good morning, ma'am. Mr. Coleman, Margaret said, her voice barely above a whisper. May I sit down, just for a moment? Isaac gestured to the chair across from him. Please. Margaret sat, placing her hands flat on the table to stop them from trembling. I spent all night thinking about what happened yesterday, about whom I've become. Isaac remained silent, giving her space to continue. My father was a Vietnam veteran, she said. He passed away 5 years ago. He would have been so ashamed of my behavior yesterday. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, framed photo of a man in military uniform. This is him, Staff Sergeant James Hensley. Isaac took the photo carefully, studying it with respect. He served with honor, I'm sure. He did, Margaret nodded, tears forming in her eyes. And he raised me to be better than what you saw yesterday. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that. She took a deep breath. I'm not here to ask you to take down the video or to forgive me. I'm here because I need to apologize to you, face to face. What I did was inexcusable. Isaac handed the photo back to her. We all have bad days, Mrs. Hensley. Margaret, she corrected him, and a bad day is no excuse for treating another human being the way I treated you. Manny approached the table cautiously. Everything okay here, Isaac? Isaac nodded. Everything's fine, Manny. Could you bring another cup of coffee for my guest? Margaret looked surprised at the gesture. You don't have to do that. I know, Isaac said simply, but my mother taught me to be kind, even when others aren't, especially then. As Margaret and Isaac shared coffee, the initial tension in the diner gradually eased. A few patrons still cast suspicious glances their way, but most returned to their conversations. I've been thinking about what you said on the bus, Margaret said. About giving people the benefit of the doubt. Isaac nodded, spreading jam on his toast. It's something I try to live by. I used to be that way, Margaret admitted. I don't know when I changed. Maybe when my father died, or when my husband left, or when my real estate business started struggling. But those are just excuses. She stirred her coffee absently. My daughter barely speaks to me anymore. She says I've become bitter. It's never too late to change course, Isaac said. I learned that in the military. Sometimes the path you're on isn't taking you where you need to go. Margaret looked up at him. How do you do it? Stay so decent? After everything you've been through? Isaac considered the question. I've seen the worst people can do to each other, but I've also seen the best. In the darkest moments, it's kindness that saves us. Not medals, not recognition, just simple human decency. Their conversation was interrupted by Tasha, the young woman from the bus, who had just walked into the diner. She spotted them and approached the table, phone in hand. "Mr. Coleman," she said, then noticed Margaret. "Oh, I didn't expect to see you here." Margaret looked down at her coffee, shame evident on her face. "Tasha, right?" Isaac said. "Please, join us." Tasha hesitated but sat down. "I wanted to let you know that the video has raised over $50,000 for the Wounded Warrior Project. People started a donation campaign in your honor." Isaac looked stunned. "That's incredible." "People want to help," Tasha explained. "Your story touched a lot of hearts." Margaret spoke up, her voice quiet but determined. "I'd like to contribute too. And not just money. I have a vacant property, a small office building. Maybe it could be used for veteran services or something." Tasha and Isaac both looked at her in surprise. "My father always talked about opening a place where veterans could get help with paperwork, job searches, that sort of thing," Margaret continued. "I never did anything about it. Maybe it's time." Isaac extended his hand across the table. "That would be a fitting tribute to your father, Margaret." As they shook hands, Tasha raised her phone. "Do you mind if I update the story? People should see this too." Margaret hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, they should see that people can change, that I'm trying to change." 6 months later, the James Hensley Veterans Resource Center opened its doors in downtown Chicago. The modest building, once a real estate office, now housed a computer lab for job searches, meeting rooms for support groups, and offices where veterans could get help navigating benefits and services. Isaac Coleman served as the center's director, having recently retired from his job. His experience made him the perfect person to guide veterans through the often confusing maze of available resources. Margaret Hensley worked there too, handling the administrative side of things. Her business skills, once focused solely on profit, were now directed toward helping others. The change had healed something in her. Her daughter Emily was a regular volunteer, and their relationship was slowly mending. On the center's opening day, a city bus pulled up outside. Dave, the driver from that fateful day, stepped off during his break to attend the ribbon-cutting ceremony. "Never thought I'd see something good come out of a bus argument," he said, shaking Isaac's hand. Tasha was there too, documenting the event for her now popular social media channel focused on community transformation stories. "This is what redemption looks like," she told her followers, panning her camera across the crowd of veterans and community members gathered for the opening. As Margaret prepared to cut the ribbon, she turned to address the crowd. "My father used to say that the measure of a person isn't in never making mistakes, it's in how you make things right afterward." She looked at Isaac, standing beside her. "Some of you may know that this center exists because of a terrible mistake I made." A moment caught on video that showed the worst of who I was. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Many recognized her from the viral video. "But that moment also introduced me to one of the finest people I've ever met," she continued, gesturing to Isaac. "A man who showed me grace when I deserved none. Who taught me that it's never too late to become the person you were meant to be." Isaac stepped forward, placing his hand over hers on the scissors. Together, they cut the ribbon, officially opening the center. As applause erupted, a city bus pulled up to the stop across the street. New passengers got on, others got off. Life in Chicago continued its normal rhythm. But for Isaac Coleman and Margaret Hensley, nothing would ever be quite the same. A chance encounter on a crowded bus had changed them both, reminding one of his enduring strength and helping the other find her way back to the person she was meant to be. The center sign caught the afternoon sunlight, the words clear for all to see, "Serving those who served us." Below it, in smaller letters, "Because everyone deserves the benefit of the doubt."